back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys! So today I'm here to do a book review, and the book I'm going to be reviewing is Beyond Belief by Jenna Miscavige Hill. This is a real life story, it's a non-fiction, and I read it as part of Non-Fiction November. It was actually the first book I finished in Non-Fiction November, I think, so that was pretty cool. I really enjoyed this. In fact, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, so that's kind of telling you how much I enjoyed it. I didn't really know anything much about Scientology before I read this. I had heard the name bandied about. I knew it was some sort of cult thing in America that some celebrities were part of and some other people were part of. I didn't really know anything more than that, so I have to say I was definitely very ignorant of what it was, hence why I bought the book to try and find out. And this is the true life story of Jenna Miscavige Hill and her family and what they went through and how she was raised as part of the Scientology cult. Essentially, she rejoined it with her family when she was very young, I think about 2 years old. So she's basically just lived her whole entire life until she escapes and writes this book in Scientology, which, let's be honest, it's not really the nicest place. Or at least her account says it's not the nicest place, and I definitely would not have enjoyed going through what she went through. Scientology, the way she describes it, kind of reminds me of like the regimented Nazi Germany, or like North Korea and the regime over there, or Mao's China, things like that. It's really regimented. Basically, you have these different systems, these different levels that you have to achieve to get to this holy state, essentially. And all throughout her life, Jenna and her siblings and her family are basically torn apart by Scientology. Her parents are never there, she never gets to see them. Her brother kind of turns away from her and then turns away from Scientology, and she can't really understand why because she's so young and she's being forced to do huge amounts of manual labour for hours and hours and hours every day. As a young child, like quite a young child, she doesn't have very good living conditions, nor do any of the other people that she's with. The only advantage that Jenna has over some of the other kids is that her uncle becomes the leader of Scientology when the older one dies. So she definitely has a step up in some regard, but also a heavy burden on her because people are looking to her for some sort of guidance, for her to potentially make a mistake and them to be able to tell on her. She's definitely got eyes on her within this organisation. What I did find fascinating about this is that it feels like a very easy read, but actually there are moments that are really tough to wrap your head around because it is hugely abusive, this Scientology cult. Both mentally, physically, it's really abusive, and when you start to think about some of the ideas that Scientology teaches to the people who are indoctrinated and the people who really dedicate their lives, it's basically like living in 1984, George Orwell style. It's not a nice place. You are completely controlled by the people above you who are interrogators. You can never trust anyone because everyone will turn on you at the slightest hint of any dissent. There is a lot of nastiness there. A lot of people who maybe would have been friends with you in the normal world if you lived outside of Scientology will turn on you because they know that if they get something from you then they won't get it from them. It's a very isolating thing, and Jenna Miscavige Hill goes through an awful lot to get out of Scientology eventually. She believes thoroughly in it because she's been raised in it. A lot of her family do it, like her father and her mother have both been part of Scientology for a very long time. They were part of it before she even was around, and then they left for a while and then they came back and got way heavier into the religion. So it's definitely a really interesting read, and I think her perspective gives it this kind of unique vision because she grew up as part of it. Not all of the adults who we know are part of Scientology actually grew up as part of this organisation and saw the brutality and the nastiness within it, but she did, and the fact that she so brutally lays the truth bare now and tells how it is and says this is what really happened. I really admire and respect anyone who does something like that, and I think she was very, very brave to be able to escape from this cult and to also be able to now protest against it, which she does very regularly. She has an organisation called Ex-Scientology Kids, which she set up, and there's a whole support system now for people who have been through this horrible thing and come out the other side. It's basically a hugely traumatic experience to grow up in a cult or something like this, and Scientology, whether it disguises itself as a religion or not, does seem, from this book and from what I've read about it generally, to be a cult rather than a religion, and the mindsets and the ideas are very, very extreme, but it's fascinating to read about. It really is fascinating, and it's baffling because it's hard to remind myself that it's not fiction, it's not a made-up story, this is real, this is something that someone has gone through and they are writing about it, and it's just mind-boggling. So I loved this. I definitely had a few moments where I was like, wow, I don't know if I could have done it, let's put it that way. It's hard, like what she goes through, and she sees people suffering and not coping and being punished for not being able to do things or not wanting to do things, or yeah, there's a lot of punishment and a lot of severity, and it's a nasty thing. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. As a read, I wouldn't like to be part of it, but I enjoyed reading about it, and I would definitely say if you don't know anything about Scientology, maybe it's time to learn something like I did, and pick up the book and try it out, because I really, really, really enjoyed it and I gave it 5 stars. So I'd love to hear if you guys have read anything similar to this. I've also read Escape by Carolyn Jessup, which is kind of similar but not quite. It's also about a religion and a cult, but this one, it was like living in a dystopian. That's how I describe it, but I really, really enjoyed the book. So 5 stars from me. Let me know if you've got recommendations similar or if you've read this one in particular, and thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you very soon in my next video. Bye!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.